Hello and welcome. I am Scrapalog, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server. We are with Impulse Storm, our Science Brute, who has 24,000 XP earned. We have level 12. We have just under a million influence because we just bought a set of DOs for level 12. And we're on the story arc for Montague Castellaneta, and we need to rescue Argot Berwat, who is a Richti. And so we're, continuing our playthrough of this character, and again, because we have already done a playthrough of a brute and already done a lot of these missions more than once, I'm not going to focus a lot on the missions and the gameplay as we're playing it, but rather we're going to be talking about other things: role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, Savage Worlds, Champions, etc. So let's start off early. There was a post, I believe it was on D&D Beyond. I sometimes get these things mixed up because I also read occasionally Reddit posts, and then there's also conversations on Discord. But there was a post somewhere in one of these places where a person who is a game master, a dungeon master in D&D, made this very poignant, I guess, post. He's kind of beside himself. And he said that he's got a bunch of players who refuse to follow his plot hooks, right? He gives them, plot ideas, rumors and things that's obviously meant to be followed up by the players. And they completely ignore them. They go off on wild tangents. They seem to be purposely, deliberately trying to go places they know he cannot have prepared or expected them to go, just to basically F with him, right? They're just like enjoy watching him squirm and try to scramble to improvise something, rather than following his plot hooks, right? So, like for instance, a great example is the old. He didn't do this, right? He didn't use this module, but the old D&D module called Village of Hamlet. There's a town, and the town itself is very well designed as a little village, and then just down the road from the town is this thing called the Moat House. It used to be like a guardhouse and has sort of fallen apart and is now being sort of camped out in by bandits and thugs and thieves and monsters. And there's not a huge plot to the module, right? Basically, the idea is if the players explore the town, they will hear rumors from the townsfolk about the trouble in the Moat House. And the assumption that Gary Gygax made when he wrote the module is any group of adventurers that hears of the troubles will, if they're worth their salt, will go attempt to fix it. They'll go into the Moat House and see if they can stop the bad guys, right? That's what you would expect the adventurers to do, and especially if you're wandering around a town and the only rumor you've got is this Moat House, then you're going to go to it. And any good group of players, certainly my group of players would do this. They're going to realize, okay, the GM expects us to go do this. He's prepared this dungeon. We should go into it because otherwise the GM just wasted all his time, right? And apparently what these players would do is be like, nah, we're going to just head north and wander into the woods and see what's there, right? And ignore the Moat House, which is the part that they knew he prepared. Like, as long as they think he's prepared something, they don't want to do it, and they purposely are trying to do things that he hasn't prepared. They're not engaging in the content at all, right? And he said, look, I don't want to railroad them, but I'm not having any fun with this. This is frustrating me. And what really kind of stood out to me in this post was the fact that he was pretty clear that the players essentially are taking this sort of sadistic delight in driving their GM up the wall. And he said, what do I do? And a lot of people gave him, different types of advice. I think it was all pretty bad. And in fact, now that I think of it, it was D&D Beyond, and I did actually send him, I don't post to those forums anymore, but I did send him a private message and said, look, all the advice they gave you is terrible. They're giving you advice that kind of assumes that it's like they missed the part of his post where he explained at the very beginning that these players are getting this sick sense of fun out of ruining their GM's day. They're purposely trying to frustrate him and drive him up the wall. And they're enjoying doing that. And he pretty much said that in so many words. That now, whether they're actually enjoying it or whether it's just his impression that they do doesn't actually matter that much. Right? What matters is that he believes and feels with his heart, right, as a GM, that these people are purposely screwing with him just to watch him squirm, right? They're purposely ignoring plot hooks, not because they don't find the plot hook to be interesting, but because they want to watch their game master squirm and watch him improvise and basically ruin his day. And I think all of the responses, at least at the last time I looked, almost assumed that the players were making a good faith effort to roleplay and just missing the plot hooks or maybe not interested in the plot hooks. That is not what was going on in this post. What was going on in this post was that these players were purposely trying to screw with the game master. Right? They were purposely trying to tick him off and make him miserable and see how far they could push him. So I responded to him, and this is my answer, and I've said this before. This is always my answer if something like this is going on. The very next time they get together, if not before, this guy needed to say, so guys, after this session, who would like to GM? Right? Don't be super adversarial about it, right? Don't be spiteful. Don't do to them what they did to you and be rude, because that's what they're doing. They're being terrible human beings doing this to a game master, purposely trying to watch him squirm, purposely ruining his fun. You don't deserve the guy to be your GM if that's what you're doing. That's just being a jerk. And so I said to him, look, you need to resign as GM. Just say to them, I need, one of you guys needs to take over. I don't want to GM anymore. But like, don't be like, I'm taking my ball and go home. Right? Don't be rude about it. Just say, hey guys, after this session, who would like to take over as DM? And see what happens. Right? And I've said this before. If you're not, as GM, if you're not enjoying the game, and especially if it's because it's something the players are doing, being jerks like this, not only don't they deserve you to do it, but like let one of them deal with it. So I would say, who wants to be GM? Right? Now, a couple of things are going to happen. If the players are actually kind of enjoying the campaign separate from being jerks and trying to ruin the GM's fun, and they want to keep playing, right, then they might back off, right? They might say, whoa, what do you mean you don't want to GM anymore? What's the story? Well, guys, you seem like you're purposely ignoring all my plot hooks, and you're just trying to force me to improv because you like to watch me squirm, and I really am not having any fun with this. You're basically ruining all my fun, and maybe that's the way you guys have fun, but it's not fun for me, and it needs to be fun for me too as a GM, and I'm not enjoying it, so I don't want to GM anymore. Right, now maybe they'll say, okay, we'll stop. And then it remains to be seen if they actually stop, because my experience with this is that sometimes people will say, yeah, we'll stop, and then they just to get you to stick on, right? And then they go back to doing it. And sometimes this will repeat, right? Yeah, oh, sorry, we forgot. We'll stop. We won't do it again. And again, right? Figuring, to just drag it out, and you'll keep GMing. So you have to kind of stick to your guns. If you're going to say that this is not acceptable and you don't want to GM this way anymore, and they say, well, we'll change, and they don't change, then you need to say, all right, well, I'm done. And then there's no allowing them to say, oh, we'll change again, right? You give them a chance to make a change. If they say they want to, give them a chance. But if they don't change, then you're done, right? And then there's no going back. So either they'll say, well, screw you, we don't enjoy your plot hooks, we don't need you to DM, or they'll say, no, we want you to keep DMing, we're sorry, we'll stop. And they'll actually stop, or maybe they won't. The other option is maybe one of them will say, yeah, I don't mind GMing, and then okay, it's not your problem anymore. But what you shouldn't do is allow them to continue acting this way and getting away with it. It's not acceptable for them to be purposely trying to make the GM miserable and ruin the GM's fun. The GM gets to have fun too, and I've said this many times before. And I've said also many times before, if the GM stops enjoying the game, your game is over. This was a very frustrated GM who had come onto the D&D Beyond forums like, I don't know what to do with these players. They're making my life miserable, and I'm not enjoying GMing, and it's making me not want to run the game. What do I do? Right? And no, the answer isn't, oh, make better plot hooks or don't put so many plot hooks in front of them or any of that. This has nothing to do with that. These players aren't missing the plot hooks because they're too subtle or because the players are too new. These people are taking, the way I understood the post, a gleeful pleasure in ignoring the plot hooks of the GM and forcing the GM to improvise stuff every session instead of using what he prepared. Right? And not every GM is going to want to or be good at improv like that. I'm frankly not, and I therefore insanely prepare with every possibility, and half the time the players still do stuff that I didn't expect, but with all that prep, it allows me to have enough material ready that I can like crib from here and crib from there, and this is the guy we're coming after. I can crib from one place or another, and that enables me to run the adventure and not get completely deer in the headlights, stymied by trying to improvise when I'm not super great at just suddenly improving everything. I mean, I can improv a little bit. Every GM has to do some. But if I've got like a whole cave network set up and you just like go somewhere else, I'm not necessarily going to, have the ability to fake a map. And so, some GMs are good at that, and some GMs aren't. And you got to, it's not the case that you can't GM if you're not great at just randomly coming up with maps off the fly. Not every GM is good at that, and you shouldn't be expected to. So yeah, my advice when this kind of thing happens is ask one of them to GM, and you're going to get one of two things happening. One is one of them will GM. Okay, problem solved. Then it's their headache, not yours, and you go back to being a player. And most people would be happy to do that. I would. Option two is they freak out and go, wait a minute, why are you quitting? They realize they've pushed you too far. And maybe they actually promise to be better about it, and they actually are better about it. But in my experience, you can't always trust that. It's not always possible to trust that, because where do I want to go here? I want to go to the generic shop. It's not always possible to trust that because, with these kinds of people who are already purposely being jerks, when a jerk says, I'll stop being a jerk, well, I don't know, folks, how many times in your experience have they actually done it? Right? I just don't have a lot of hope for that. But you got to do something, and you certainly don't want to have an experience where you are miserable and unhappy and hate every session. If that's going to happen, you're going to just want to stop GMing, and that's going to be the end of the game anyway. So you may as well try to get them to either come to some sort of a more appropriate type of behavior, or let one of them have the headache of this. Right? Let him see what it's like. Let somebody else see what it's like to deal with these jerks who won't follow any of your story plot lines and just go off into the place they know you haven't mapped just to screw with you. Right? I mean, that is really awful behavior among players. And thankfully, 0 people in my group would do that. Nobody in my group does that at all. It certainly happens. It happened both in my game and in the Candlekeep interim game that my friend ran. It certainly absolutely does happen that players miss clues or misunderstand what the GM wanted and go off in a direction that they didn't expect by accident, right? It happened. It's happened a little bit in Rome. It happened in Candlekeep. I was one of the ones doing it. We had found this map, and I didn't cotton on to the fact that the next step was for us to follow the map. And this is going to be a problem because Lady Jane always aggroes things. But maybe we'll be okay if there aren't too many ghosts. The main problem here is with the ghosts. But we're low enough level that it looks like maybe we're going to be getting mostly regular thorns. So just got to see what happens here. So in this campaign, I think I may have mentioned this in one of the other playthroughs, and if so, then I apologize for repeating myself. But we were in the first adventure, let's say, and we found a map in that part of that adventure. We were inside the Candlekeep, which is this like basically the Great Library of Alexandria. So we're inside the library. We went into this extra dimensional space. We found this map that led away from Candlekeep and to a different area. And so I didn't think anything of the map because I misunderstood that. Oh man, I forgot this guy was going to blow up. I misunderstood that. That I thought everything in the Candlekeep Mysteries book took place inside of Candlekeep. I didn't think we were supposed to leave. And so we got out of that first adventure, and one of the other players who was new to the group, and I will say in my defense, he didn't talk about anything with the group. He just said, okay, I'm going to get my stuff and I'm going to leave. He went to the hotel, the inn, got his stuff, packed up and left. He didn't tell any of the rest of us where he was going, and we had all kind of gone back to our rooms. So, you know, I think a couple of us were looking out of our room, and we saw him getting ready to leave, and he was leaving. And what he was doing was following up on this map, right? He correctly surmised that the reason the map was there was because we were supposed to go there next. The rest of us didn't realize that. And we incorrectly surmised that the map was like a red herring, and that we were supposed to stay in the library and continue investigating the library. So that was a mistake that the rest of us made. And he was right and we were wrong about following up on the clue. But both groups of people, both the guy who was leaving to follow up the clue and the rest of us who were staying behind, were doing what we thought the GM wanted us to do. Right? We were trying to follow the plot threads we thought were there and to do what we thought was what the next step in the adventure was supposed to be, and now we get the damn ghosts. Gosh, I hate these guys. Try to do a little extra damage and hope that they don't leave. The biggest problem is they disappear and they go somewhere else, and she, as an AI, knows where they're going, and she runs off and tries to follow them. And that's a huge problem. We do have a ghost slaying axe, maybe that'll help, but we got to stop them from retreating. Anyway, we were all trying our best to do what the GM wanted, and those of us who were staying, who didn't try to leave, we messed up by accident. We were not sitting there going, oh, let's screw with the GM and not follow this map. That is not what we were doing. And the GM then said, okay, guys, I don't want to railroad anybody, when the other player was going out the door, out the gate. And the rest of us sort of were watching him go and not planning to join him because he didn't tell us where he was going or what he was doing, right? I mean, that really was his fault. He should have come to us and said, guys, I want to go over here. We might have gone with him, but he didn't say anything to us. Right? And our characters were, you know, we kind of didn't know each other that well yet. And we were just kind of starting to become friends, and all of a sudden one of them just disappears. So that was partly his fault. He shouldn't have done that, okay? But when he started to leave, the GM said, guys, I don't want to railroad anybody, but, you know, there is a rule in D&D, don't split the party, right? and I thought, okay, that was him talking to the other guy, telling him, don't leave, you shouldn't leave. But actually, he was talking to the rest of us and trying to convince us to go with him without saying that, right? He didn't want to do spoilers, right? So my point is, nobody was trying to screw the GM. And what happened was he eventually had an NPC give us a couple of hints that made the rest of us realize, oh, the guy who was leaving to go follow this map had it right. And we screwed up. We then all followed the map. All of us. It was no longer a question. Now, I'll say, a couple of us felt like our characters probably wouldn't have followed this map, that we had no reason to follow it. But as players, we knew, at this point, we realized this is what the GM has planned for us to do, so we're going to effing do it. Because that's what you do as a courteous player in a game like D&D or Champions. When the GM has set up an adventure or a scenario for you to do, you freaking do it. Right? I don't want to hear about player agency. How about the DM's prep time? The DM cannot prep every possible adventure you might want to go on. He can only prep 1 or 2 or maybe 3. You go on one of them. And if you realize that the GM had planned for you to follow a map and go to a certain place and really hadn't planned for you to ignore the map, then you get your butt where that map says to go. And to me, that's the only way to be a courteous player. So definitely, guys, if you're a D&D player, Champions player, do not do this sort of thing to people. Do not do this thing to your GM where you're just, where he wants you to go and you say, screw it, I'm not going where he wants. Don't do that. It's actually cruel to the GM. It's mean. It's rude. You shouldn't do it. And yeah, I'm here to tell you, don't do it. So, yeah, definitely don't do that. Instead, honor what the GM has done. Respect the work that the GM has done. You want the GM to make plot threads about your character background, right? And respect your character background. Well, you need to respect the world background that the GM just told you about that indicates that you should be going on this adventure, and go on the adventure, right? And definitely don't try to be spiteful and nasty to the GM and be like, no, I'm not going to follow your plot hook. Instead, I'm going to try to figure out the place on the map you haven't worked out at all and go there just to screw you. Don't do that. All right, as soon as I realized, oh, the DM wants us to follow the map, this guy who was leaving had it right. I mean, it basically took till the end of the session. I thought he was wrong. I thought we weren't supposed to go. I thought we were supposed to stay in Candlekeep. The adventure book is called The Candlekeep Mysteries, and I mistakenly thought that that meant you hang out in Candlekeep and you get a bunch of adventures inside of Candlekeep, right? That's what I thought. And I'm talking so much I forgot to level up. So I was wrong about that, but even when I was doing this thing that was wrong, okay, I was trying to follow what I thought the GM's plot hook was. I made a mistake, but I was never trying like, oh, if this is the plot hook, I'm going to freaking ignore it. Nobody was doing that. And by the way, the DM didn't think anybody was doing it. He realized, I mean, he and I talked about it. He realized, you know what, I screwed up. I made this too subtle. Right? And I think the other player had information we didn't that made him want to follow this map, but he didn't share the information with us. And I think the DM was a little frustrated with that too, because by not sharing the information with us, he almost got the party splitting up like this. And so, we figured it out by the end of the session. We corrected it. We then followed him to his mentor, where we were supposed to go, and we got involved in the next adventure. Now, again, I feel like it wasn't super in character for my character to be doing this, but I didn't sit there and go, this is not what my character would do. Right? My character has no no good reason from her background or from whatever roleplay has gone on to go to this place on the map. Why would she go? I mean, that's all true. I didn't say I'm not going, my character wouldn't go. I said, okay, this is where we're supposed to go, I'm going to go. Okay. So, um, always, 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 you should be trying to find every possible way to cooperate. Role playing is cooperative storytelling. Emphasis on cooperation. Emphasis on cooperative, right? Cooperative in big, bold, capital letters. Storytelling in a tiny little, weeny little, infinitesimally small font. Cooperative is the most important part of that phrase. And you have to cooperate with each other. You want the GM to cooperate with you, you've got to cooperate with the GM. There's just no two ways about it. And so, and as a GM, obviously you've got to cooperate with the players, but GMs usually do that, in my experience. And like our GM was cooperating with it. He wasn't failing to cooperate with us, and we weren't failing to cooperate with him. We just got confused. But yeah, GMs usually are cooperating with you. They get that most of the time. Some bad GMs don't, and that's why they're bad GMs. But the GM will usually cooperate with you. But as a player, you've got to cooperate with the GM, and you've got to cooperate with each other. And if you don't do that, you don't have a role-playing game, and it won't be a fun game. How are we doing on time? 26 minutes. Okay, so we have time to do another mission. Okay, so we have to craft the lost cure, and we're going to need to do that at a crafting station. And we have a base, so let's do it at the base. I think we can do it there. I don't think we have to go to the university. So we go to our base. One thing annoys me, I changed the colors of the supergroup to like silver and blue. And it didn't change these. I'm going to have to, I guess, delete them and put new ones in. It didn't auto-update them. I thought it did. I thought it used to do that, so I don't know what the story is with that. Okay, so what do we need? Invention. Here we go. So we got the lost cure. Well, I guess we can leave that right there. And actually, let's talk to him. And then he's going to say, let's cure the lost. We got to cure 20 of them. Let's just use the teleporter and go straight to King's Row, where we will find a bunch of lost. And that is the nice thing about having a base. I don't know where it's going to put us in King's Row. We'll see. Okay, that's in the sewer. I still don't understand the logic of why they set up the base teleporter exit points the way they did. So we're going to come down here to Industrial Avenue. Industrial Avenue has a bunch of lost. They're fairly low level, but we don't really need to worry about like fighting hard enemies. We're just curing them. I kind of wish this recharge was a little bit faster. But fortunately, there's only 20 that we have to do. 18 left. So guys, feel free to post your comments. What experiences have you had as a game master, as a player? Have you ever had a situation where a player was purposely trying to make your life terrible as a GM? I hope no one is going to post that I do it to my GM, that you're purposely trying to screw with them. If you've done it, please reconsider. Please understand that a game master does an awful lot of work, and they put their heart and soul into your campaign, and they really don't deserve to be treated like that. If the GM has put his heart and soul into a map, it is only courtesy for you to explore that map. If they put their heart and soul into building monsters and NPCs in an area, it is only courtesy for you to go in that area and allow those things to be used. Yes, it is true that you shouldn't have to go places, and you should be able to, play your character more or less the way you think they should be played. But as a matter of courtesy to the game master, if you aren't allowing the game master to enjoy the campaign, your campaign's days are numbered, and you're not going to be able to enjoy it anyway. So I ask any of you who've been purposely screwing with your GM to reconsider. And if you see, by the way, guys, if you see players doing this to your GM, you need to stick up for the GM, and you need to be the GM's best friend. Say, oh, I realize my character would do this, and go ahead and go on the adventure that you know that the GM is prepared for you. It's only common courtesy to do that. Matt Colville, I think, said at one point that the players don't get to decide what the adventure is. That's really the role of the GM. If you want, as a game master, you can offer several plot hooks and let the players pick the ones that they want. But doing that is a lot of work, and it's not necessarily a requirement as a game master. And so if the game master really only has time to build one plot hook, then there may not be other plot hooks, and you're going to just have to go on the adventure that the GM set up, and you really should do that. Just want to make sure these guys aren't going to aggro to me. They shouldn't. No, they're attacking the citizen. That's unfortunate. That means I'm going to have to defend him. Yeah, it really is common courtesy for you to simply go on the adventure that the GM put in front of you, and it is not necessarily an expectation or requirement of a game master that they have to give you multiple story arcs and plot hooks. They might only have one. A lot of the pre-written campaigns really only have one. It depends on who the writer is, depends on the company. Some companies give more plot hooks than others, and that sort of thing. But there are many pre-written adventures in which there's really only one hook. I mean, if you look at, for instance, the adventure we just talked about, the Village of Hamlet, there's only one hook, and that hook is there's a moat house over there, right? So if the GM bought the Village of Hamlet in the old days, for $7.99 back when that was actual money, and he read through it all, and he prepared it, and he got miniatures and painted them, and had it all ready to go and all set up. I shouldn't have beat them up. I should have wanted them. That was stupid. And he bought it, he prepped it, he worked on it, and he got it all ready for you. And you know that he did that, right? It's really rude to go, yeah, we're not going to go on this because it's the only plot hook and it's boring. He bought the module, and he's the DM. If you're not going to go on his adventures, then you need to DM. And then you make up the adventure, right? If you want to choose the adventure that you're going to go on and say, I don't want to do the moat house, I want to do the Secret of Bone Hill, then you need to buy the Secret of Bone Hill and run it. Otherwise, if the GM bought the Village of Hamlet and wants to do the moat house, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're not willing to cooperate like that, and you're not willing to compromise with your what your character would do, and you're not willing to go on the adventures as the GM prepared them, especially ones that he paid his own money for, right? I mean, $7.99 wasn't much back in the day, but something like Curse of Strahd costs a lot of money. If you're not going to go on that adventure, Don't make him pay $30 and waste all the time it takes to read the book and prep the adventure. It's just rude. And as a game master, if your players are doing this stuff to you, do not let them do it. Talk to them however you want to, and I definitely think, realistically, the password is Pachambellum. Okay. Realistically, the only way you're going to get traction is if you don't just threaten to quit. If you guys don't shape up, I'm going to quit. Just say I quit, right? And I mean, don't be rude. And that's what I'm saying. The approach to this isn't to say I quit in actual words. Instead, say who would like to GM in my place. I don't want to GM anymore. And then when they ask you why, say because you guys are acting this way, because you're ignoring all my plot threads, and you seem to be purposely trying to go places you know I haven't prepared to screw with me. And I don't appreciate being screwed with after all the preparation I'm doing. Right? If you don't like the adventures that I'm giving you, then somebody else DMs. If you do like the adventures I'm giving you, then go on them. But don't make me prep and then you don't go on the adventure I prepped. That's not fair to me, and I don't have time to infinitely prep things, and I don't appreciate being forced to improvise like this just because you guys are, just trying to screw around with me. It's just not right. And you should tell them so and then see what they do. And either they'll realize the error of their ways and kind of come clean, or maybe that's not the right word, but like shape up, or they will find another GM. So we're in the Midnighter Club, and we talk to Mercedes. I like Mercedes, but I don't think she has any missions for us yet. So I'll have to do that another time. What are we supposed to do now? Talk to this guy. And now we're done. And we're halfway through level 13, guys. I think that's enough. And we'll stop here. Until next time, folks, I am Scrapperlock. This has been City of Heroes on the Rebirth server. And always remember, cooperate with your GM and go on the adventures your GM sets for you. So long, and be good.